building one-on-one relationship with the students so they understand that I'm somebody who is there that cares about them and cares about their learning, but not just about their learning, but cares about them as individuals. And building these cohorts of people who work well together and care about each other is what I try and strive for in a classroom culture.
Hey everyone, my name's Kyle Walgren, and yes, this is another episode of the Business of Education. We're still at EdTech. Who knows where we're going to be at when you guys see this, but today we get to have another conversation with another education leader. Alois Pajak has spent his career focused on implementing STEM and teaching people really the fundamentals of how STEM works. Al, thanks for taking some time today and jumping on the podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's good to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Al, I'm super excited to learn from you. As I had mentioned kind of before we were getting conversation, I'm not really educated in this whole STEM topic, so I brought you on so I can learn about it. But from a 40,000 foot overview, how would you explain STEM and what's important to know about it?
I think the older way of looking at STEM was looking at science, technology, and engineering and math as isolated from each other, and important to develop those skills in students so that they can go on to these careers in the future. But if you look at it holistically, it's more real. When you're working with science, technology, engineering, math, they're all tools that feed into each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you start to throw in art is another design tool. If you look at what engineers do when they're designing something, it's all art-based.
Right.
So I propose, or I'm a proponent of using these subjects as integrated subjects, holistic subjects, so that the students get a more real experience of what it's like to work in real outside of school. Because when we're working, or especially tech-oriented jobs or science-oriented jobs, you're using all the tools together. You're not just using them separately, siloed from each other like you would in typical schools.
Okay. How would you integrate STEM with holistical learning and enhance holistical learning for the students?
One of those, I like to start with literature.
Sure.
So even though I'm not an ELA teacher, I like to build a background and understanding using literature as an example. And so the students would read a book or read chapters from a book that provide some of the experience and backgrounds they need to understand the subject that we'll be working with. So we start with literature and then apply science skills to it and apply art skills to it until we start building a more complete picture of what's going on. And it could be fiction, it could be nonfiction, just something that kind of spur the students' interest. And learning is, my background is actually in science, not in education. I started off life as a geologist, then the vertebrate paleontologist working with the Park Service and working with several museums. That's not my background, I don't think. And so I would go off to, I've been to Australia looking for fossils with the University of California at Riverside. In the Park Service, I worked at John Day Fossil Beds National Monument in Eastern Oregon. And we would look for things like early rodents and look at how their teeth were being worn down by grasses. And the modern rodents have ever-growing teeth because grasses have silicates in them that work like sandpaper and etch the teeth down.
Okay.
Those early rodents they had rooted teeth. So that once the teeth wore out, the rodent starved to death.
Oh, wow.
And so you can look at the progression preserved in the rock record of how the teeth evolved with the grasslands to get taller and eventually lose their roots and become ever-growing.
Wow.
And so I was really into that, and it didn't, nobody wants to pay anybody to look at rodent teeth for a living. And I had a family to support, and I went into education, and I loved it ever since.
So you're not the first person that has told us that you didn't have any intentions of getting into education. I think it actually is probably like 6 or 8 out of 10 of our guests come in and they're like, I have never had any intentions of getting into education. Yeah. I was in this other field and I just happened to fall in love with teaching, or somebody said I could do this, and it just kind of cannonballed, and now they've dedicated their lives to it. You've been in the field for, I believe, over 20 years, right?
Yes.
With education, or at least the people that I talk to, they find something that they become very passionate about within the education field. What
Yeah.
was that thing that lit the fire for you when you came into education?
For me, it's really working with students and getting to know the students. Building one-on-one relationship with the students so they understand that I'm somebody who is there that cares about them and cares about their learning, but not just about their learning, but cares about them as individuals. And building these cohorts of people who work well together and care about each other is what I try and strive for in a classroom culture.
My team does a wonderful job at prepping me for this, but it says that you spend a lot of your time mentoring, building relationships, and doing coaching with your students. Tell me how that's impacted their lives and yours as well.
I was coaching teachers.
Okay, coaching teachers.
Yeah. My last position was a STEM integration specialist out at a new high school in Buckeye, Arizona. And I got to help pick the team of teachers. And we became so close because we were starting this school together. And we originally had 90 students. And so the 5 teachers and I worked together with each of the students. We got to know them really well. But I also built very close relationships with the teachers. And I was able to guide them through project-based learning and deeper learning experiences with their students. And teachers come to me. I still get feedback from the teachers saying they wouldn't be teaching today if they didn't have that interaction with me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I use cognitive coaching is kind of an interesting process. It involves a lot of listening and also reflective listening, where you're kind of mirroring what they say to get them to think about it. So if they have a question or a concern, then you use reflective listening to help coach them through what they're experiencing.
In some of the notes that we've taken, it talks about, what you just mentioned there and how you've helped teach and roll out STEM, but you also have written curriculum around them. How does that all tie together, in making, because designing a curriculum, you have to have people engaged, right? If it's boring and they don't want to do it,
right,
you've already lost them. So with the way that technology changes and how fast the world changes, what are some of those things that you do to make sure that your teachers are engaged in that content and your students?
Well, one of the things I do is I go to a lot of professional development programs on my own so I can learn and keep on top of the things. One of the reasons I'm here at ISTE is because I want to learn more about how AI is used in the classroom. And I'm also presenting on AI tomorrow. AI text to image, and I created a little backstory. I like to use Adobe Express.
Okay.
And I went into Adobe once, and I noticed there was a new button called Text to Image AI Generator. And I said, well, I wonder how this works. So I typed in some keywords to search for, just like a search engine. But I said, if I want an image, I want something that's kind of interesting. So I typed scary big-eyed baby. And I got hundreds of big-eyed baby pictures that were just, some of them were really creepy. But then I said, what can I do next? And I was working on a unit that I was going to use with students about taking food up to the moon. And so I used that same AI program to build a restaurant on the moon. And then after that, I said, how else could I teach with AI text to image generators? And I realized that maybe we could make art forgeries.
Make what?
Forgeries of actual art pieces.
Okay.
And so I started experimenting with different artists and different styles of art, like Van Gogh and Monet and Salvador Dali and even Bob Ross. And I generated pictures in sometimes 30 seconds that looked like something they could have made, even with brushstrokes painted in. And it tells me that there is so much potential for creativity in AI that I didn't understand. And I needed to learn more about it. So I come into ISTE, I am developing a very good understanding of how to use AI with students and in the classroom. A lot of people are concerned that things like ChatGTP will be used to just find the answers and cheat, which it can be. I kind of did that with part of the talk I'm giving. I had to write descriptions of how Like Van Gogh used style and technique. And instead of researching it, I took 10 seconds, typed the prompt into ChatGTP, and got 2 pages of how Van Gogh painted.
Right.
That's cheating, but I did it anyway.
The
I didn't learn anything, and I think that goes on. And I did it for each of the artists. You can definitely tell that an algorithm is out there searching for these things. I used the same keywords. I just changed the name of the artist, and it built these biographies for these artists that are pretty good. I compared them to Wikipedia. But I still don't. One of the things I'm emphasizing is I don't feel like I created these things using AI. I miss that sense of creativity and the sense of research, and getting a deep dive into somebody like Van Gogh is more fascinating than to enter in some words into ChatGTP and to see what comes out.
Yeah,
and I'm hoping that the teachers will understand that when I present it tomorrow, and that students will get an idea, grasp the idea that just getting an answer is not the process of learning. It's understanding how things are made and how things work, and what thought processes go into creating something.
the journey that you go on.
Yes,
to
the
get
journey is the fun part. It's not just finding the answer.
there. For sure. I as you were explaining that, I started thinking about how I build companies, and ultimately your end goal is to build a successful company that's profitable, that you can get ready to sell. But if you just went from like startup to execution, there's not a lot there.
No.
It's the whole journey.
You don't have a product.
Of learning the whole thing and understanding the things that you don't know. And, like having you on the show, I wanted to learn about some certain topics. And that's why I do these, is so I can learn from people that are experts in that space. And it helps me be able to think, from a different standpoint and see different angles. And one of the things that's been so interesting is seeing the adoption of AI. Our company is an AI reading company. So you hear both ends of it, the concerns of ChatGPT, and, but where I really hope that AI fits in the school ecosystem is using it to spend more time on the things that a computer can't do.
Yeah.
There's always going to be an emotional part of learning where a teacher really needs to engage with their students, really needs to participate in that journey with them to try and bring. It's almost like a love of learning. I wasn't a good reader. I hated school. I would have never told you I was getting into education when I was 17, 18 years old. I would have never, ever said that.
Yeah.
But now to be able to like dive into a rabbit hole and learn about a topic that maybe wasn't even that interesting when you started learning about it,
right,
is so exciting. And I think AI should be able to open up those opportunities.
I think for me, AI is going to do at least two major things. One, it's going to make things a little bit easier for teachers to kind of explore how the students are learning, because they'll be able to upload the student work into an AI program to kind of see how it was pieced together.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest advantage is it's going to relieve teachers of some of the minutia they have to deal with, some of the weeds that they're always stumbling through. And it'll free up more time to spend with their students.
Focus on
things like project-based learning and making things more challenging for students. I hear people talking about COVID and how it's still affecting our students. And as I work closely with students, I don't see them as being affected by what happened with COVID and quarantine. As when they're quarantined, they spent more time learning on their own and discovering things on purpose, or just spending time on the computer with friends they couldn't see. And when they came back together, they started looking for deeper experiences in the classroom, and they may not be getting those. So I think that in some ways, the problems that are showing up in education now are that the students aren't being fed what they're looking for. And so they're getting given a worksheet, and they won't do the worksheet because they don't find any purpose behind it.
No, I agree with that 100%.
And now that we have you can put ChatGPT on the phone. You can take a picture of that worksheet, and ChatGPT will populate it with answers. And there's nothing teachers can do about it. If you send a worksheet home, that's what they're going to do because they don't see a purpose behind it.
Right.
So AI is going to give us the ability to push our students harder and further and stronger.
That I love everything you said about it. One of the directions that we took was, how do you bring somebody into reading that might not necessarily like reading? And it's by giving them an opportunity to learn about something that's interesting to them.
Right.
And curriculum didn't necessarily always do that. There was the set curriculum, and that's what the student had to read. By AI, by being able to create a personalized learning journey based off interests, topics, and hobbies, I think that we're going to see engagement levels go way up.
Yeah.
And people accelerate in learning that maybe not necessarily did that. I really didn't care about Charlotte's Web and Old Yeller, you know what I mean? But that's what I was given to read.
Right.
Today we don't have to do that. And AI is going to help provide solutions or opportunities or content to students in a way that's engaging for them.
I think another aspect of learning that is going to be opening up for students is when I'm teaching writing in science, for example, I teach no fear writing.
Okay.
I tell them, don't worry about how it's put together. I want to see what you know, and I want to see you build your content. I want you to create something that's meaningful based on what we've done in class. And AI can correct all the things that are wrong with it. You know, like Grammarly is AI, and it can help a student understand what is wrong grammatically with what they've written. But they have the freedom to just write like crazy and then put it into one of these programs to get it fixed.
Right.
And
That's what I do.
It takes the fear out of writing.
That's what I do. I have been a subscriber with Grammarly, I think, since like the first week I knew about it, and I've kept it ever since. The words that I write
on my dissertation, and I plugged it into Grammarly, and I was totally frustrated with the suggestions it gave me. It took all of my style out, and I hated it.
In personal opinion, when it comes to issues around literacy, reading, or grammar, a lot of those people don't have a style because they're scared to do it at all.
Right.
So you are good at it, so you have your own style of how you do it.
Yeah.
So you can see that. But the kids that aren't doing it, or even adults that aren't doing it, there's no style there because it's not happening.
Early in my teaching career, I discovered something interesting, and that students have a lot of fear about education, about messing up, getting things wrong. And I told students to draw a circle. And some students started to panic because they don't know how to draw a perfect circle. And I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just draw a circle. And I went on the board and I just drew a circle, but it was a pretty good circle. I had students that would not draw the circle unless I had something to trace it with.
So interesting. But it makes sense. The way that we've seen speech technology advance is a lot of kids use our product, but they'll go and do it behind closed doors. And you'll watch them. They'll go do it 4 or 5 times in a row.
Yeah.
Because they're watching themselves improve in real time. And those are probably the same kids that were like me that wouldn't do it at all because I didn't want somebody to tell me I was wrong.
Right.
So I'm super excited to see how AI provides, students, teachers, opportunities that they might not necessarily have ever had in the traditional way of doing it, but also seeing how much time we can free up within the classroom from the things like you said,
and if it builds
papers.
more trust into education for the students, then it's going to be a very good thing.
Then it's a win. I've never thought about it from that standpoint, but everything that you said about it makes a lot of sense, a ton of sense. Where do you see, what are you most excited about to see where AI goes in the learning process?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about that. I'm involved with the maker movement, and I'm one of the I'm on the planning committee for the Southwest Maker Fest. We haven't met. We've only met once since the quarantine. We're still working on bringing it back to Mesa. I would really love it if AI allowed people to be more creative and take things like video editing and video making, or poetry or reading, into new directions. I was talking to a teacher yesterday who was a little nervous about AI, and asked if she'd ever watched Star Trek. And I said, people walk through the ship talking to the computer all day long, and that's AI. It's an interaction between the computer and the people on board the ship. And they're getting information that is helping the people, and the ship is learning from the people as well. It's monitoring their health as they're walking around. It's almost like the ship is smart enough to care for the people that's on board. And if that's the direction we end up, which I think we could end up in that pathway, I think that would be a very good thing.
No, that makes sense. Everybody that wears an Apple Watch, it's constantly giving you information, whether you want it or not. It's time to stand up. It's time to sit down. It's time to walk more. But it's all for embetterment, of your health and everything else with it. One thing that I like to go over or ask before we ever end a show is about networking.
Yeah.
You were nice enough to bless us with your time today to learn from you. How do you leverage, a lot of the people that watch our show are young EdTech founders. So how do you leverage your network, and what's some advice to a young founder to use the network in maybe a way that they weren't thinking about it before?
Seek those people that you might not see as resources, that you might not imagine would be good resources. So like coming to an EdTech conference, I never know who I'm going to meet here, but down the road, we can interact and learn from each other. I know you're from Arizona, right?
I'm actually from Canada, but I've spent time in Arizona. We have schools in Arizona that use our technology.
Yeah, there are a lot of good tech conferences local in Arizona. A lot of places where entrepreneurs can meet with teachers, and teachers, as you can tell here, we're surrounded by entrepreneurs who are reaching out to teachers. Teachers can provide good opportunities to see what gaps and niches need to be filled by entrepreneurism.
No, I like that. I like that a lot.
So,
what are you most excited about ISTE for? What are you excited to see here?
I haven't been to ISTE since before the pandemic, and so I'm excited to be here again. I'm excited to meet new people, and I think I'm mostly excited about learning how to use AI in the classroom.
Well, I'm excited to follow you and follow on your journey and be a part of it now. Al, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I appreciate it, and I look forward to getting to know you more. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anytime.
Thank you.